All right. Well, hello, creatives, community, kind folks out there. Welcome to the channel. We have our collegiates and classmates over in Fantasy Grounds Discord. If you join their Discord, you can listen in if you prefer. If maybe this is watching on YouTube or listening on YouTube is not optimal for you to absorb this show. We simulcast at the same time live. Also, many episodes, ton of them older episodes have been uploaded to SoundCloud. So if you wish to absorb the channel through an audio format as a podcast, you may do so as well. But what do we do here? Well, every week we pick a theme and then we subdivide that theme into different categories. So this week we're going to talk about beasts. Yes, the category of creatures known as beasts, animals, those kind of things. And then we're going to subdivide it all week long. Monster Monday, we have Discord Tuesday where we talk generally about mechanics. World Building Wednesday, using them in our setting and building, maybe even creating a setting where whatever theme we're talking about is the dominant force. Third Pillar Thursday, which deals with the third pillar of exploration in tabletop gaming. And then, of course, Future Friday, which deals from modern day into the far future and science fiction, which is a great I'm a great fan of that. Now, one of the general descriptions of beasts, beasts, animals, natural creatures. One of the descriptions is beasts are non-humanoid creatures that are a natural part of the fantasy ecology. That's an important distinction, fantasy. Some of them have magical powers, but most are unintelligent and lack any society or language. Beasts include all varieties of ordinary animals, dinosaurs, and giant versions of animals. I would even include the idea of the dire animal as well, which seems to be its own. Dante, what's going on, man? Zevron. Now, I would include the dire version, which seems to be a language adjective added to like very aggressive bestial type of animals in the fantasy world. And the term fantasy, and whether you're talking about ancient world fantasy or sci-fi fantasy, is do these creatures exist in the world on their own, kind of related to its own having its own biological processes. So I suppose there are dire puppies, Rickard. There would have to be if they're dire wolves. And it seems to be that I would absolutely include giant. Yes, giant animals are absolutely included in that, Zevron. Ooh, giant scorpions, giant snakes, giant octopi. These are creatures that seem to. The other traits would be that they exist on their own biologically without needing an outside source for them to exist, such as a wizard or a factory or some kind of taint or whatnot. Oh man, it could be a dire puppy, could be a dire corgis and sloths. Yeah. And Zev says, what discerns a dire wolf or a giant wolf? I'm thinking, this is weird to say, but I'm thinking the literature version of dire has been supplanted with the adjective of dire in like Dungeons and Dragons and other games, in the sense that like a giant scorpion isn't necessarily violent and aggressive. And it seems that the dire moniker are with animals that are almost, they exist on their own, but they almost seem to have rabies about them, right? They almost have like a mindless rage inside of them, and there isn't anything to that. The aggression overrides other behavioral factors, such as, I don't know, just generally sleeping or eating or migrating or, extremely feral. Yes, I definitely agree with you, Zevron. Thank you. I'm thinking that the dire moniker is something that's extremely feral. So a dire wolf, although not diseased, would probably always be snarling, would be very aggressive, just because in role-playing games as well, that we need enemies, right? If we're going to bother getting better at killing things, we need things to kill, and they can't all be humanoids. So the easiest thing for us to wrap our heads around are animals, and humanity has already known that plenty of animals are very dangerous and aggressive, and ancient man has thought of them as, you know, aggressive-minded things. But we know in our modern day that, well, you know, maybe some of the animals are just hungry or diseased or migrating, or it's during the mating season or something. So to differentiate, say, the normal goings on of a wolf versus, you know, a more bestial version of the same thing, I believe the dire moniker is attached to it. Yeah, Dante, yeah, a dire Tarrasque. Time to leave the planet. Heck yeah. Oh man. Now, okay, so we have ourselves like giant sized versions of the animals, but what about those? What about other bestial creatures you have in your world? You would have to make the distinction, like, are Pegasi considered beasts in your world? Like, do they breed on their own, or were they created? Was it a divine creation, or are chimera, you know, aberrant styled or monstrosities? Probably. Most of the time we think of, say, a chimera as being something formed from like a corruption of magic or something of that nature. But beasts, the bestial creature type, is much like you guys were talking about the kraken and dire meerkat. It's pretty nasty. I like meerkats; they're fun to look at and see. But the point is, are the creatures that you have in your world, for example, we know longtime participant Zevron is very much into Egyptological settings. So the idea of people riding around on giant scorpions, and maybe there's soldiers who raise and ride on, you know, giant cobras or something. They may just be a natural part of the world. And so a dire unicorn or dire pegasi seems very wrong, which depending on your setting could be very real. You know, a gray and black unicorn with a blood red horn, or pegasi that come in all the myriad colors and breeding styles of horses would be pretty simple, because we're going to flow into that. Dire hyenas or mounts in my setting. Yeah. And of course we can reskin the animals. It's not the game doesn't have an exhaustive list of the types and breeds of animals that we have in our own real world, right? So I'm aware that hyenas aren't necessarily lupine type, but for example, if you want to take a dire wolf, or even the even larger version of it, the warg, and say, oh well, in this part of my world we have dire hyenas and dire jackals, dire dingoes, giant coyotes, et cetera, et cetera. It goes to show that, yeah, you can absolutely reskin, reflavor, reuse, repurpose the statistics that we already have. A giant, an elephant is very much like a woolly mammoth in your prehistoric setting. Just call it something else and you're done. Sorry about that, Palora. Yeah. We're not going down the unicorns. We apologize. We're going to leave the unicorns alone. But there are some creatures that are very magical, and you have to make the distinction. Like, are they just a natural part of the background, or is this thing that exists in the world? Like, do they breed on their own? Do they have little babies? Do they have their own instinctual behaviors that, if left to their own devices, they would just continue with? Dead Man says the terror bird, sometimes called by their scientific name Forus hesidae. The terror bird. I'd have to look that up. But again, you know, other types of beasts would be dinosaurs. Maybe they're animals from a different age. And you could extrapolate, let's say in your world, it has gone on into the future. Maybe there's some animals today that you feel in your world have, um, yeah, yeah. Yeah, the posted terror board is in the Discord. Yeah, I see it. And Rickard says, can plants be dire, like dire Venus flytrap? I'm not sure. Now, mind you, I think that that dire moniker isn't applied to everything that is dangerous, but I would include plants in that, although we haven't gotten to plants yet, and plants and oozes and things like that. We're going to get to that. I think we can take a week of that as well, because I thought about, like, can you really talk about plants that much? I don't know. But all right, so today is Monster Monday. You guys are silly. What are you guys going to name the entire animal species and just put dire to it? You guys are silly. But giant insects or insect swarms have a lot to do with that, whether they are um, uh, whether you're talking about variations off of the tens of thousands of insects that we have, or arachnids even, that we have in our own world, and extrapolating them out. I mean, if you just go for spiders, we've got, you know, wolf spiders and leaping spiders and black widow spiders and trapdoor spiders and that kind of thing. Yeah. And Deadman says, remember, dire creatures must be carnivorous, which in and of itself makes them an enemy of humanity, as opposed to, say, a creature that isn't feral in its outlook. So we want to the yeah, trapdoor spiders the size of a small house. Hell yeah, of course. I would say beasts generally are considered not sapient creatures, but how we use them in the game might change. Like, for example, today, many of us are sensitive to the fact that animals are behaving in a manner in which they are instinctually to behave in. For example, Shark Week. We have Shark Week, and people who love themselves some Shark Week understand that while sharks can be aggressive towards people, that they are not specifically aggressive only towards people for the purpose of killing people, right? We know that the sharks, they are the garbage disposals of the open sea, and that when provoked, many of these animals or beasts will, you know, go after humanity. And the provocation could be anything from scent to being moved out of its territory to threatening their young, etc. So one thing I'm a huge proponent of in role-playing games basically is role play. Putting creatures in a game is allows you to role play as the game master, the dungeon master. And far too often I hear for especially new players and game masters, they want to create encounters that are balanced. And my contention is, mathematically, that is a very difficult thing to do, because the permutations of who is in an adventuring party, where they're located, and such is very difficult to modulate. So for me, a better balance technique is to balance things in terms of its verisimilitude. How realistic are your creatures that the players encounter? How realistic is it for them to encounter these creatures, and what behaviors do they have? For example, maybe a bear will attack the party because the bear feels like its young is being threatened. But if a player burns the bear, and the bear's, you know, would the bear run from fire? I mean, there's no rules. Okay, the party's surrounded by wolves, and the classic, I'm going to pick up a stick and have it on fire, or a torch, and swing it around to keep the wolves away from me. I mean, there's no specific ruling on that says, well, wolves, you guys are silly. Whether wolves are specifically afraid of fire, but it is their behavior. A natural animal would be afraid of fire, right? And role playing their actions. Are creatures just migrating from one area to another and would ignore the party? Are they more liable to go after the backpacks of the player characters to steal the food and get away from the dangers? Are they more liable to pile on the weakest member, like say a pack of hyena would definitely attack the weakest member of a party, and or the straggler in the party, the slowest member, and drag them away. Now, Pelora says, I just wasn't sure if we were going to get into gnolls and friends or just your animalistic beasties. We are going to get into the BFFs of these animals, right? Because along with having dangerous encounters with our animal friends, right? The dire bear and the dire wolves and the giant scorpions and such. Oh, the Japanese giant hornet. Thank you, Dead Man. Posted the link in the Discord over at Fantasy Grounds. Yeah. By the way, if you join Fantasy Grounds, you'll see where we're at, because we're down in the boiler room. Just go to the left and slide all the way down. That's where we always hang out. But the idea that dire rust monster, do you really have a dire rust monster? But again, like a rust monster, role playing the act, even a mindless creature like an animal has a personality, it has a behavior. If you throw your shield over into the corner, it's probably far safer for a rust monster to go after it, let's say. Yeah, yeah, eating all your equipment, 2 items at a time. So role-playing the behavior of that creature. Could you distract a creature by throwing meat or that dead goblin that you just killed into the corner, or dropping out of a tree and watching, the pack of animals devour it while you get to run away? Is that an option? As a game master or dungeon master, if you want, the more real you want your world to feel, the more real their behaviors should be, such as, like Pelora says, a lot of creatures are scavengers, either entirely or to supplement hunting. Exactly. I mean, remember, our 99% of the videos you see where a bear happens to hit upon humanity are bears scavenging. They're scavenging in the trash cans. Sometimes they're just inquisitive. We've seen here in the States, at least, we hear of news stories where people are being punished by the community, because the law enforcement, because people will try to feed wild animals off of their back porch. They'll leave out salt lick for deer, or they'll leave, bird seed and those kind of things. And those creatures will scavenge and hunt. And so an adventuring party of 5 people going through the unknown, you're going through, a bestial landscape. You're the invader, and they very much might tackle the gnome in the party to steal their backpack and run off, right? When the player leaves camp, who's to say that there aren't scavengers that are going to go through or sniff this odd scent that they haven't smelled before in and around their camp, to trying to discover what it is? And if they are not dire creatures, they might just be behaving in a manner in which they normally would. Are they there to find materials to take back to their nest? Are they insects trying to lay eggs in the player character's backpacks or skin? Do the players come upon a swarm of giant ants that are just going and collecting bits and pieces of food and other scraps to take back to their hive? It's possible that a forest fire could make animals panic in the woods, and the animals are just rushing past the PCs and through their camp in a mad rush. It could be mating season, and the PCs stumble upon, I don't know, what's giant goats or boulets, or the land sharks or something, trying to mate with each other, and it's dangerous to get in between 2 members of a species trying to dominate each other. Or there could be a creature just threatening other creatures out of their territory, peeing on trees and rocks and such, and snarling just to keep predators away from their territory, knowing that they hunt in a particular location. So by portraying animals in their natural habitat, I think it behooves us not to do that, and not just to make them a bag of hit points and die rolls for just to elicit a combat because you somehow are missing a combat in the game. Um, Zev says some cases animals get into areas that they aren't supposed to because humans spread to their habitat. So bears try to explore things like cars to look for food and claw at the hell and back. Yeah, they sure do. There will be bears being trapped in cars, bears getting going into people's houses and such and trying to figure their way out. Deer have done the same thing. And, so the expansion of humanity could very much have an impact on feeding. And there could be external sources, right? That goblinoid horde of orcs or hobgoblins or something could have could be decimating the environment so far more miles away than humanity realizes. But the side effect is pushing the natural habitat into human lands or humanoid lands. So the bears and the tigers and giant snakes and things like that could be moving further into, say, settled lands. And then that is causing something. And that in itself, the druid in the party or the ranger is like, they don't normally come this close to humanity. I wonder why. Let me figure this out. And then lo and behold, there is a reason why it's being pushed in because of, lions and tigers and bears and lions, tigers, and bears. Exactly, Pillar. Dead Man puts it in the YouTube hummingbird swarming a feeder. Yeah, that is a thing as well. There could be any number of reasons why people are feeding animals and either taking care of them for moral reasons. Hey, humanity's been hell. We nearly hunted whales to extinction to get whale oil and such. And if you want to include in your world reasons why humanity is going through the process of exterminating an animal, and the PCs are on the side of either capturing those animals or protecting them or using their resources, we have plenty of historical information to mix into our world. Maybe there's the ivory taken from elephants. There's whale oil. There's the killing creatures for skin, i.e. clubbing seals. Not that I'm a proponent of that. I'm saying that we have in our own world historical actions by people. We can take that and just turn the volume up again, turn the volume up to 11 and put that into our own world. Are there people capturing Pegasi for a particular reason, or unicorns for the horn, right? Hey, grind up that unicorn horn and it will turn you immortal or give you a accelerated libido or something, Zev says, imagine a couple of wolves or other animals entering a wizard's tower in the forest because it smelled a roast and ended up chugging a potion to turn 4 times bigger or get wings. Yeah, yeah. Who's to say that wouldn't happen? PCs find the wizard in the woods, and oh boy, the wizard was killed out here by something, and all of a sudden, like you said, you have some wolves. One wolf has wings, another wolf is invisible, another wolf is 4 times its own size, another one's breathing fire randomly, and all because of just investigating something, right? Who's to say that hasn't happened, or that animals haven't gone into something? So okay, so what are some reasonings why we would want to include them? Well, first of all, unicorn blood makes a fantastic lotion. Oh, you're so wrong. That is so wrong and yet so right. So why would they be included? Well, like we said, maybe they're being forced out of their habitat and they are being aggressive because there's a panic situation. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, stop clubbing baby seals. Exactly. And maybe the animals we know. You're so wrong, Seb. That is dark. Yeah, unicorn blood makes you look 10 years younger, literally. Yeah. So it could be that maybe the rangers and druids in your setting understand that by eliminating one or more of these creatures in the cycle of life would make other things get larger. For example, those feral wolves in the woods are keeping other creatures at bay. They're eating other things. And sure, we don't want a wolf dragging our children off into the woods. But if you kill off the entire pack of them and lure them and trap them and kill them, maybe something else even gets even far more dangerous. Yeah. Oh, that. Oh, you guys are bad. Oh man, I'm gonna get dinged on YouTube for this. Ricker says there's a reason this nightclub has an age requirement of 18. No clubbing baby seals in here. Yeah, don't club the babies, club the adults, right? Nightclub, so wrong. I get it. Yeah, it's again, yes, we're talking, we're being sarcastic. We're talking about role playing, but there's other things that beasts humanity very, very early in our, I think even pre Homo sapien, we were taking animals and doing things with them not normally seen by the animals. For example, we domesticated a lot of animals. There are reasons why, despite the fact that humanity has we have a very deep instinctual fear of many of these animals, which is why dragons. There's the idea that dragons exist in our mythology because they represent everything we fear and don't understand. Dragons fly. We don't understand how to fly. We can't fly. We fear snakes and lizards for any number of reasons. They're poisonous. They're cold-blooded. We fear them. We fear tigers and lupines and felines of very large sizes. And so they're dragons' body shapes are like that, kind of a concoction of all of them. The chimera is a perfect example of kind of, literally having things that we fear or that are aggressive animals all put together. And so we definitely can make beasts the inciting factor, the motivating force to get the PCs into action. Zev says, perhaps you come across a wizard crossbreeder. Yep, making things like owlbears, spider monkeys, pegasi, etc., to try and improve the species or deal with something in the environment like predators or rampant poachers. I was definitely we're definitely heading down that path. We're already there, right? Who's to say that there isn't, like you say, a wizard, an alchemist, an herbalist, an apothecary, a druidic circle that is crossbreeding animals to save them, to make them better, to sell them on an open market. There could just be general natives to various areas where the PCs come from. Those giant scorpions are dangerous as all hell. When they encounter the people, they're just training them as mounts. Animals and beasts can become mounts. They can be pets. They can become labor animals. They are food. They could produce food-like materials, such as milking a cow or milking goats. They could produce a beehive, as dangerous as hives of bees are. Those who normally deal with them and understand their behavior can very easily go to a beehive and extract the honeycomb and for the purpose of getting the honey and filtering it and things of that nature. Or hell, just taking the honeycomb with you on an adventure, and they're like, nah, let's go over to my beehive in the back of where I live or something. Or maybe one or more of the players, it's like, yeah, I know we're being attacked by a swarm of bees, but there's got to be a beehive around here. Can I use my class ability or spell or something like that to calm the beehive down so we can get some of their honeycomb and take that on an adventure and use that as a ration or something? And I'd be like, I didn't think about that. That's a great idea. Deadman says, if you really look around, you could find a swarm of hundreds of hummingbirds. As a matter of fact, you can. There are hummingbird feeders. It's possible to, just because of our environment and our cultures, some of us find some creatures to be horrific or dirty or poisonous or devilish. and such. And then in other communities, those animals are part of society. They are something that they eat, or they extract the poison from, or they use all elements of that animal, whether it's using their skin and bone and such. And they breed them, and they breed them into different, because of their colors or size or strength or speed, training them to hunt alongside them, or to use them to stop other hazards in the world. Many dog breeds were bred because they were bred to do things like hunt after rats. Cats were brought into homes to hunt after mice and rats that got into the area. A lot of hunting dogs were bred to hunt alongside human hunters, along with falcons, and falconry was another skill. So your average citizen could learn to, travel on horseback, a trained mount, with a pack of dogs, or one or more dogs, using them as hounds to hunt down prey, and release a falcon to retrieve a dead bird or something. All of that to help humanity survive, and all of that done with the use of, minimal weapons and a lot of animals around them. Zev says, also keep in mind, monsters can just be animals to natives. When people first saw elephants in Africa or India, they swore they were monsters with teeth the size of a person, and the natives saw them as normal. Exactly. And to make your world exciting, Zev goes on to say, a griffin could be a monster in a neighboring town, but this city trains them and sells them as pets, mounts, farm, guard animals. Exactly. So to make your world exciting, it could be the PCs see a griffin in the air, and they're like, oh, a griffin. Oh no, we've got a hippogriff. What the heck? Oh, we've got to run and hide, and it might attack us. And then come to find out, like, oh, by the way, it swoops down to attack you, and it has barding on its shoulders. It's got a large medallion crest around its neck, and the PCs are like scratching their heads, like, wait a minute. That's not an accident. And then, of course, lo and behold, they find out that it's got a saddle on its back, and then it swoops back around again, and they see a bunch of, errant knights in the woods eating, and they sent their griffins out to go feed before they come back, and not expecting adventurers or explorers to be in this part of the land that has been unexplored ever before. And, it swoops down and steals your chips. Can't steal just one. So, but exactly that, and that could elicit any number of actions. Maybe these knights could be the PC's allies, but they kill the griffin, which sparks off, conflict in a manner in which came about through a mistake. Oh, in our world, dire seagulls. Oh, yeah. Oh, seagulls are the worst. Oh man. But yeah, imagine the quest being the party to return a griffin to its owner. Of course, you can, by reshaping our interactions, you can have any number of encounters, right? Maybe the PCs have to find, it's a first level game, and the PCs must climb up into the mountains to retrieve a griffin egg and give it to a king for a dowry for his daughter getting married or something. Or the PCs must capture animals that have been released from a zoo, or to find animals to domesticate them because they're being sold on the open market. And, any number of encounters we have with with our creatures do not necessarily need to be, I kill it and it kills me. It could be the act of, that's how that community of these bestial animals, to train them, to domesticate them, much like domesticating horses, or trying to keep the giant birds away out of the nest, because just 3 of those eggs can feed like 30 people or something. Oh, is the stream messing up? Oh no. I'm not getting a flare on my end yet. Sometimes it'll show up across the top of the page. But sorry about that, guys. If I'm starting to flare in and out. Okay, good. Oh man. But again, the decision as to what kinds of animals, like a griffin, animals like griffins and pegasi could have been created through arcane means. Maybe one of the gods created them. Maybe there was a fountain of magic that created them. It could be a breeding of strange species that got together. But over time, maybe they breed true. For example, the owlbear may breed true as well. You know, a horse and a Pegasus may or may not give birth to a horse with wings. And there could be a community of people that are trying to breed certain types to get certain colors. And again, breed them for toughness, speed, aggressiveness, intelligence, and that kind of thing. And what a great way to modify, instead of just using the base stat blocks, what a great way to modify them. Oh, there's a draft horse version of a Pegasus that's bigger and tougher versus a Mustang version of a Pegasus versus a Pinto or whatever other types of horses. You could have the same type of breeding amongst giant snakes and giant scorpions and giant spiders. And that can really enhance the game, especially if you really want to have a game where you want to use mounted combat. I love the idea of mounted combat, but it's not really applicable inside of a dungeon. But out in the wild world, why not have some mounted combat? Let your player, the player that's able to get a mount, get one, and hand off a couple of mounts to your player characters, especially if the rest of the world is also using those mounts, i.e. the Wild West here in the States. You know, people riding on horses and horseback, and wagons and such could be changed into yeah, could be changed into like the Pinto hippogriffs and griffins and manticores and other mountable type of creatures in your world. And so it's not a matter of, oh no, if I give my players a Pegasus, they're just going to fly over all the dangers in my world. Ugh. Well, yes, but no. If there are other people who have the exact same thing, it kind of equalizes itself, right? So now you could say it's far more complicated to add these creatures in, especially if they have their own movement, they have their own attacks. But if the players, for example, let's say there's a player who's just using their mount or their pet, not familiar, but a pet as like a meat shield. Oh, I'm going to send the bear in front of me so it can take all the hits. Maybe the native peoples that live out in the wild look at this and they're like, your bear's got a lot of scars on him. I bet you're treating him bad, and I don't like you anymore, right? Zev says petting zoos can be run by druids wishing to fund for sanctuaries for the creatures. Ooh, that's an idea. Yeah. And in many ways, how many times have we known of animals to assist us in any number of things? Animals can detect weather changes. Animals have been used, I believe, small birds or canaries were taken down into mines because if they started to pass out and die, they were far more sensitive to poisonous gases down in mines or lack of oxygen, and that could be an alert. Animals have been used to detect all kinds of horrors. In zombie apocalypse, there are many times where guards use dogs who can smell the viral outbreak of the zombie infestation, infection inside of people, and can smell it and they go crazy. Or they can any number of things. Animals could be trained to sniff out maybe not magic, but like shape changers or lycanthropes or the diseased or sorcerers in your world, or certain types of material components used in magical spells. They can smell the bat guano in your pocket, being confiscated or burned by the guards because they don't want anybody casting fireball in their realm or something. So animals are definitely animals and beasts could definitely be our work multipliers. And of course, our enemies have them too. The idea of gnolls and the hyenas are advanced scouts, and of course, they run faster. They attack in packs, and the gnolls with their javelins and spears and short swords, short blades, or something, might send out their pack of hyena to hunt down food and come across the PCs, or hunt down escaped slaves or something. Riding on the back of the giant versions of the same things are the same way, throwing nets or ropes onto people and dragging them behind them and such. Yeah, Zev says, goes on to talk about the petting zoo by Drew. It says, and some bratty kid breaks the gate so the animals flee, and now the players are being hired to find and herd the animals in the city. That'd be awesome. Definitely a third pillar kind of adventure, right? Climbing up in the rafters and buildings and going down in the sewers and running around alleyways and everything. Oh man. Capturing wild animals that have gone into people's homes, wrecking shop. Oh man, that'd be wild animals escape the zoo, go into the apothecary's lab, spilling all kinds of chemicals everywhere, and hilarity ensues. Oh man, Pelor says, we were poor growing up. My dad used to go down to mines to make sure it was safe for the canaries. You're so wrong. Now, mind you, how popular was that a real thing, or is that like a urban legend? I don't know. A lot of things I hear have always been are not factual, but they're urban legends. But urban legends come from somewhere. Yeah. Boggish Bockwinkel. Ooh. Boggish Bachman, thank you for joining in, man. Says dogs were used to sniff out Terminators. Yep, exactly. And it's not, again, it's not the animals are evil or that we've got to kill the animal, which, you might have to kill the animals if they become infected by some kind of disease or something. But they're also work multipliers. They allow humanity by us domesticating them, or at least working with those animals to allow us to expand our reach and our abilities. Now, not Pelor says the canary thing was real. Okay, all right. Dead Man says recovering escaped animals was a side quest in 2nd and 3rd edition D&D. And what a great way to go. Listen, guys, it's not about you killing the thing. It's about you doing something non-violent to the thing. I mean, sure, could you put it to sleep or charm it or trap it, or chase this thing into a narrow valley or into a pit. Oops, it falls into the pit. Now you have to heal it because it's got a broken leg, but it doesn't want you near it. So it's going to try to strike out at you. And so the wizard's like, I'm going to put to sleep so you, the cleric, can heal it. And again, working together to create these dynamic encounters, which don't necessarily mean with the barbarian in the background raising his hand like, I can deal out like over 100 points of damage a swing. Can I kill something? And they're like, dude, relax. This isn't about you right now. This is about us doing something else. Now, maybe Pelor put in the Discord, sentinel species, the term for creatures used to detect dangers to people. I did not know there was an actual term for that. So sentinel species are possible for our big bads to use, right? The vampire lord using packs of wolves, the goblinoid army using dire wolves and wargs and such, the lizard folk using lizards, crocodiles or giant frogs or whatever, using them as like sentinel species to spot other dangers around them, even if it's only so much as to do nothing but to detect the player characters and then run back. There could be owls circling overhead or flocks of birds circling overhead like ravens. So the hag, like Raven Queen or something in the dark swamp, has her swarm of ravens circling overhead to spot the invaders into her territory. Yep, Pelor says anything that can smell poisons. As a matter of fact, it's known that some domestic animals like dogs could smell infections, and they are known to detect detect epileptic seizures, the onset of epileptic seizures by people who are suffering from something, and detect that. So you could have in your world a reskin of what we would consider handicaps in our world, but there are animals that are sensitive to it and they alert people because of it. So an oracle might express their ability to see the future through an epileptic styled seizure, but the oracle is surrounded by her loyal pack of wolves or dogs or something. Zev says maybe a mimic, a shape-changing creature would be very unique and nice to add to a collection. Depending on how natural you think the mimic or shape-changing style creature is lycanthropy a disease that's spreading your world, or is it an arcane curse? And if it is an arcane curse, maybe it just breeds true. For example, maybe the first mimics were created by a wizard's experiment, but was released. What first part? Talking about maybe a noble wishes for you to find and subdue and not kill. Capital, capitalize, not kill a unique animal so he may add it to his zoo or give it as a gift to a relative. Absolutely, something could have escaped, or the noble wants to find a Pegasus and wants to ride a Pegasus, and the noble's like, I will pay you greatly to go capture this Pegasus, and oh, by the way, it lives up in those mountains. Could you go get it for me? And the PCs not only have to go up in the mountains and capture the Pegasus, they got to bring it back down. The Pegasus is like, what the hell I am? I'm not going anywhere, until maybe one of the PCs befriends it, or they're able to subdue it, bringing it back, find out the noble plans on killing it or punishing it or treats it brutally. And maybe the paladin PC is like, the hell you are going to whip this Pegasus, punches him in the face and takes the Pegasus, i.e. now it becomes, instead of a magic item, now maybe the player gets a Pegasus. That'd be kind of cool. It could be a Dances with Wolves situation where the PCs are slowly getting a relationship with some kind of wild animals, and over time, i.e. players gain levels, the animals go from being very scared and xenophobic to helping the PCs, to becoming a pet, to becoming a familiar of one of the PCs. You're so wrong, Polar. Chihuahuas protect people from being taken seriously. Oh, you went there. You sure did. Bogdish Bonkwinkle says use peacock type creatures to protect a harem, and chihuahuas as sentinel animals as well. Well, animals and pets are often used in social interactions, right? They are signs of wealth. They're signs of privilege and power. They could also be, it's the drug lord that's sitting back in their expansive mansion with their legs crossed, surrounded by armed guards with a pet tiger next to them. It's the big bad sitting on the throne. And on either side is some kind of normally aggressive feral animal that is docile, trained, maybe chained up as they're holding the chains to keep these creatures at bay, as the big bad, of course, talks very, very civilly to the players, but they're surrounded by something that is bestial. Ricker says, I want to ride a Pegasus now. I think that'd be quite a bit harder than riding a horse. You better find the right saddle to hold on to that thing, because if he turns upside down, yeah. Zeb says a wild magic surge may draw a swarm of hummingbirds to feed off the nearby energy. Yeah. A head saying maybe a druid uses magic hummingbirds that feed off of the energy of wild magic, able to detect sorcerers, and a wild magic surge may draw a swarm of hummingbirds to feed off the nearby energy. Right. So, again, and this doesn't necessarily need to be like protect animals, kill animals. It could be that maybe a disease or a plague is spreading, much how plagues have been spread by rats or mosquitoes or something. Maybe scourges and giant rats and giant spiders are spreading some form of infestation or infection amongst the population, and the PCs have to put them down. The druid beseeches the city and says, listen, I need people to help me kill off these animals because they're spreading a disease that's running rampant. And maybe the other members of the druidic circle are like, that's just a normal part of life. Who cares that people are getting killed, right? That's the cycle of life. And maybe the druid PC is like, nah, we don't need to see innocent people and children and elderly folks getting sick by these things. We need to kill them off, or at least draw them away from the population to do so, right? Dead Man says, have a friend who made a dire chihuahua for his pet. Guys, what the hell? Oh man, hilarious, but why not? And of course, we talked about reskinning, right? Reskin, reflavor, repurpose, reuse. Um, if you think familiars and pets in the game, there's only a limited number, just reskin it to something else. Give it a new look. If you have, if someone wants, if someone wants a feline and there's only a wolf, just change the name. Call it's the same stats as a wolf, but I'm going to call it a panther. It's the same stats as an eagle, but I'm going to call it a falcon or a blood hawk or any number of things, right? Just call it something else, and we definitely can expand out the idea, like Bognish Bockwinkel mentions, like peacocks and chihuahuas in a social setting. There may be many creatures that are um, used to enhance someone's status in a city, but the animals also operate as something else. Maybe those animals can detect the uses of cantrips and magic inside of a dinner party. Maybe those animals are they are spies, able to retrieve small devices, like a small monkey or something, steals things as for a pickpocket, and is able to steal a key and drop it from the ceiling, and the pickpocket goes over the corner and catches the key, and the or steals an important missive out of the backpack or satchel of an orphan kid, riding horseback through the wilderness or something, to get it to the front lines, and someone is out there and steals the missive with a flying bird or a monkey or something of that nature. Someone uses a snake to poison someone and assassinate them, and spills the snakes over a ledge and locks the door behind them, hoping someone dies. uh, Pelor says, just thought about truffle pigs, and truffle dogs. An owlbear can smell out a certain magical crystal, but needs a team of people to keep it from going wild and killing nearby people. Exactly. I'm a big proponent of things held in the middle. So instead of what owlbears being completely wild and feral or being completely domesticated, there's this middle ground where people need the owlbears, let's say, to find and sniff out these magical crystals that the dwarves have been, or gnomes have been, scavenging in the wild. But the owlbears are really, really wild, and they really don't have much control over them. So maybe there are handlers using some form of like electric prods, or throwing a harness over their necks or faces or something, to keep them in check temporarily, even though they know that it is only going to last a couple of hours. But I know there's a vein of these crystals somewhere around here, and that kind of thing. It could very much be much like trying to domesticate a wild horse. Some fail at it, some are really good at it, and the prices paid for those who are very good at it might be very high, or they are in the employ of nobles or rich merchants to keep them out of the hands of the common people, or maybe people just don't have the money to afford it. Yeah, exactly, Zeb. Snakes. Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes? A classic line from the Indiana Jones movies. Rickard, I think all chihuahuas are dire. uh, Pelora says, could be a plot hook being the guard, or just world building. I suppose referring to Chihuahua. I hope stop referring to Chihuahuas, but definitely could be a plot hook. Many of these animals could be plot hooks. Being a guard, or just world building, in the sense that our initial interaction with them might be, oh, it's wild. We're PCs. This thing is wild. Let's kill it, defend ourselves, run from it, stop it, chase it off. But it may lead to other things. Chasing off the wild animal might be like, I don't want to kill it. But if it's in the employ of a bigger bad, it's possible that, ooh, it's like a scout. It's going to take back its information, or the big bad can see through its eyes, and or it can sense the sorcerer or the maybe a specific race of people. Maybe it can detect dragonborn or tieflings or elves. They just have a certain scent about them, or it could be their diet. Even elves, you guys are like, macrobiotics, man. You can smell your little I don't know, rabbit-sized shittings everywhere. Yeah. The ghosts of snakes, ghosts and snakes. Get out. Why do athletes hate snakes? All they do is boo and hiss. Oh, you guys are strange. Go down some strange pathways. But snakes are, the idea of the snake charmer. In our modern day, we have snake charmers and the people who put their heads inside of the mouths of alligators and crocodiles. There's the crocodile wranglers. There's the person that goes noodling for catfish by literally sticking their fist down into the murky waters of still waters to pull catfish out of the bottom silt, having the catfish wrap around their fists. We know of there's whole channels dedicated to people who fly fish and hunt and that kind of thing. So we can definitely use them to use very simple animals in our own world to expand out the outer edges of our world by pulling them in. Zev says maybe the crystals have a type of fern or berries growing near them. The crystals amplify magic and substitute components, but it drives the user angry and feral for a time if touched or handled. It could be even something that maybe these animals eat, turning them into the feral version of themselves. And so it's almost like tracing it backwards, finding the more feral and the dire versions of these animals, or the giant size versions of these animals. It's like, oh, we're getting closer to the berries, underneath of which the berries are being, their growth is being affected by these crystals. Like one thing could lead to another. Definitely an explorative, one clue leads to another. One thing leads to another. Yeah. Yeah, why do athletes hate ghost snakes? All they do is boo and hiss. You guys are weird. Now I just imagine a giant sloth slowly chimping on those crystals bigger than the tree. Chomping on these crystals bigger than the trees. Yeah, could be. Well, I don't know where you guys are getting that from. Hating ghost snakes. Okay, so along with using these, so many animals have a lot of impact on how society is made, and definitely using it. I know this is flowing in the World Building Wednesday, but definitely using these animals and bestial creatures to shape how other cultures deal with things. For example, PCs go into a town and there are these small wild dogs, not chihuahuas, running around chasing rats and such. And that might throw the PCs off when they see a pack of dogs running at them, but the pack of dogs just scurries between their legs going after some rats it saw in the distance or something, right? So it could be that there are hunting birds nesting up into the highest rafters of a city, and those birds are out to hunt, I don't know, ravens or vultures or something. It's the hag that is surrounded by a flock of birds, and she uses them to capture to gather small components for her alchemical experiments, her cauldrons of evil or something. And also they make a great way to stack some of your enemies, and i.e. controlling some of the action economy, which we're going to get into tomorrow, right? One hag against 5 PCs, the hag is dead. First round, boom, dead. But if she's surrounded by, 8 giant wolves that she feeds raw meat to, and a swarm or 3 of of ravens, not giant ravens, but just regular swarms of ravens, and maybe a giant bird or 2 that also, perch on her mold infested, rotting home that she has out in the deep swamp or something. And so, these things are just like the necromancer surrounded by the undead. There could be many other big bads that are surrounded by animals that have been domesticated, or maybe they're just feral and there's something that's willing to feed them, dead bodies hung on torsos in where these feral animals eat, or they've been turned that way. Maybe they've been turned feral and they normally aren't, like pit bulls, and whatever the pit bulls and Rottweilers and other animals are turned or bred into the more feral versions of themselves, and they're being used as fighting animals in pits, and they're being used as mounts, and they're being used as commodities and such. So yeah. Zev says, a friend of mine played a gnome cavalier with a dire corgi as her mount. The dire corgi was the size of a small pony. Yeah, exactly. Love ourselves some corgi racing, right? A giant swarm of giant ravens to blot out the sun. Exactly. There are a lot of execution methods using beasts. You can go all day on that. Ooh, yeah, drawn and quartered, being buried deep enough with your head only poking out, and honey being poured over you, and ants swarming over your face. The rat placed on the stomach and a fire. The rat placed over stomach, bucket over the rat, lighting a fire over the bucket, forcing the rat to burrow through the person's body to escape the heat. There is the idea of placing an insect or three, rot grubs, yep, maggots, rot grubs, leeches. There's other types of insects that want to lay eggs inside of people. It's like, yeah, just rot grubs. Yeah. Does 5th edition have rot grubs? I remember 1st edition, rot grubs were nasty. You just basically had to cut someone's arm or hand off if they reached their hand into a dead body, because they got rot grubs, and you only had a few rounds to cut the arm off before they they have a swarm of rot grubs. Ooh, they could drop them into a pit full of them or something. Oh man. But anyway, guys, we've passed the hour mark. Thank you very much. We could go on all day with this. We don't need to, because we're going to go all week with this. So tomorrow, Discord Tuesday, we're going to talk a little bit more game mechanics, action economy, handling swarms of something, not just the swarm. Yeah, Zev says if you don't burn it or heal with greater restoration, you're dead. How do we handle far too many die rolls versus lumping these things together if they're like in a big herd or something, adding them into the game in terms of the mechanics, changing some of the mechanics. Yeah. Uh-oh. I hear you, Zev. Like, can you tell I'm bitter about how I died to one of those things? Yeah, we sure can. And we didn't even talk about animals spreading other things, animals being infected by disease and they spread disease, animals being poisoned, animals being injured, animals being pregnant, needing to lay eggs or breed or give birth. We didn't talk about young animals versus older animals. We didn't talk about alpha animals being the strongest, fastest, most durable animal, taking care of the smaller ones. There are plenty of animals where you have an alpha male surrounded by a bunch of females, who the females may look different narratively, and they may perform different functions, much like the lion surrounded by a pride of female lionesses, who with the female guys. Everybody have a great one. Yep, here, yeah, the connection's getting unstable again. Phillies and foals. Deadman says, is that right? You're thinking of falls. Guys, have a great one. I will see thee later. Going to be in the Discord for 2 seconds.